Welcome back to the Guitar Learning Show. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Bob.
And today we are going to do a new pedal board build. I know we have a pedal board built, but this is the old pedal board. And we wanted to play a little bit on the new pedal board so that when we have the new one built, we have a comparison of the sound.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because the new one is going to be basically the only thing that's going to be the same are the pedals themselves, right? We're getting new power, new patch cables, we have a new board, and a switching system.
Yes, we do.
Yep.
So, and it's a much larger board, so it can accommodate that that new switching system.
Absolutely.
I guess we'll play a little bit on a couple of the pedals, and then later on in the video, we'll play the same pedals with the new setup and see if you hear a difference. We'll compare them kind of side by side.
So right now we have no pedals on. Probably need some reverb at least. Anything else you want on?
No, that's
Oh, the
good.
compressor's on, excuse me.
Oh,
yep, the
that's
compressor's
fine.
also on.
What do you want to play?
Well, let's do, let's start with the Tumnus.
Okay.
Little drive there.
Alrighty.
And the Dane.
With no boost, right?
Yep. Okay, and then let's hit the violet a little bit.
Yeah, I gotta
Play
hear
that
the
one a lot.
violet. Yeah. How about the hard drive?
Sure.
All right, well, that's a fair representation to, I mean, to my ears,
Yeah, I mean,
they're,
right, and the place where you're trying to control unwanted noise and stuff the most are on your drives, right? Because they're pushing the front of the amp. Everything is louder. The hiss is louder. Any whines or whistles from the power are going to be a little louder. So that gives us a good feel for. And this is set up the way most of us set up our boards, right? You have power going to everything, and then you have a patch cable going from pedal to pedal to pedal. So in this case, the guitar comes into the fuzz and goes. Well, I'm not sure which it goes.
well,
this way.
I'll tell you how it goes.
Yeah,
Because it doesn't go exactly the way it looks.
okay.
So the guitar goes into the fuzz, which, just word of advice, if you're not already doing it, fuzz should always be the absolute first pedal before your tuner. Almost all tuners are buffered, and you do not want a fuzz after anything that's buffered.
Right.
So fuzz first, always. So fuzzed into tuner, into the compressor, into the octave, into the univibe, and then down to the Dane. And then from the Dane, it's I have the Boss noise gate, and it has the send and return, so you can run your drive pedals sort of separate from everything else in the circuit. So the drive pedals are going into the send and return in the circuit of the noise gate. So everything I just mentioned before up to the univibe is going into the input of the noise gate, and then the output of the noise gate is going to be the flight delay and then the reverb. So there should be a tonal benefit from using the noise gate this way.
Yeah.
And that's not the purpose of this video to do that. No. But still, to my ears, this doesn't sound ideal. I don't love it.
Well, so the pedals don't sound as good as I've heard them sound.
Yeah,
and they certainly don't sound like if you were to run a guitar straight into like the violet and then straight into the amp. And if you've built a board as opposed to just using single pedals, you know exactly what that feels like, right? You know, the sound quality changes, and part of the reason is even if you have, you know, you're only running one pedal, your signal is going through all of the pedals for everything.
Whether they're on or off, it doesn't matter. There's definitely resistance. There's definitely noise introduced, and a reduction of signal that occurs, and a coloring in not a good way of the signal.
Right, absolutely. So we're going to be replacing everything, and everything except the pedals, and we'll see how it turns out after that.
And I'm using a Rockboard power supply, which it's a fairly decent power supply. It's not super noisy.
Right.
So, but I decided to upgrade to a toroidal Chuck's power supply in the hopes of getting the board to be even a little bit more quiet and having a little more of expansion opportunities too with that.
Yeah, the best thing you can do for your sound, especially for noise level, for that hiss, is invest in good power.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I did forget. I do have my looper pedal. That's the very last pedal in my chain. And as you can see, it's not even on the board. Clearly, I have no room for it. But that's after the reverb, the reverb, the looper, and then it goes right into the Bad Cat amplifier. So let's build the board.
Let's build the board. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've taken the board apart, as you can see, and we've got the pedals placed, the ones that are going to go on the board. And we wanted to just talk a little bit about the new components or the new connections that we're going to use for this.
Yep.
So do you want to talk about the power supply?
Sure. So this is a Chalk's power supply. Chalk's is widely considered one of the top power supplies out there. So this is there's two components here. There's the main power supply and an expansion, because it does allow you to daisy chain to get as many pedals as you need to be able to power. So it's a switching power supply. Everything's fully isolated. The patch cables use RCA jacks on them, so you're not splicing patch cables or anything like that. And it's very flexible in terms of voltages and has plenty of power for, if you're running, if you have a pedal that sounds better at 18 volts or something, you can do that here. And it's very flexible and provides a lot of great clean power.
The other thing is, and it's not a huge thing for this board build, because the board, as we'll show you in a few minutes, is pretty large. But that has a very low profile. That's a thin power supply, so it fits pretty readily under most any board.
Yeah, it's really great for that, and I didn't even realize that until you mentioned it, because I had a problem with a board. It was a small board we would use for those jam sessions we were doing.
Okay.
And it sat very close to the ground, and to put a power supply underneath, I was actually looking up specs to try to find the thinnest power supply I could find. I didn't look at the Chalks at that point. I should have.
I'm glad I looked at that. So the next big piece of equipment is the GigRig QuarterMaster. This is the QMX10. So this is a loop switcher, and you essentially plug each pedal into the there's a send and return for each one. So you need more cables than you otherwise would, and they isolate each of the pedals, and it's really especially ideal with the high noise pedals like your drive pedals.
Absolutely.
So that will help to really clean up the sound and really help to minimize any of the tone suck that you would otherwise have with the way I was doing the board before, where every pedal was connected to the previous pedal. So there's that, and there's a really cool functionality to this, and we'll go over that, I think, when we get everything hooked up. We'll talk a little bit about that.
But when we talk about isolating the pedals, we mentioned when we showed the original board that your signal, even if you have only one pedal on, your signal's going through every pedal. With something like the QuarterMaster, the signal comes into the QuarterMaster and it only goes to those pedals that you're using at the time.
Right.
So if you've just got 2 pedals on, it's only going to those 2 pedals. The rest of your pedals are completely isolated.
That's a good point. Thanks. I forgot about that part. That's pretty much the point of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that and all your buttons are in one place and you're not trying to step over pedals to step on.
Yeah, it's kind of handy.
Yeah. So the QMX10 is really just truly a loop switcher. There's no programmability aside from the flip-flop function we'll show you later. You don't have, it doesn't allow you to set up combinations of pedals you activate with one button or anything like that. It's really about isolating and making it easy to access your pedals.
And this company does make some of the best programmable switchers and, of course, even loop switchers. For my needs at the moment, I did not need a programmable switcher, and they can get fairly expensive. The switchers are in the early thousands, and this I think this was around somewhere between $600 and $700. I want to say, I don't remember exactly. Anyway, we'll have a link in the description to their website.
Then the last piece of the puzzle here is the cables. These are all going to be custom cables. These are Evidence Audio SIS solderless cables. It's a very high quality cable. I think they call their cable Monorail, and then it's the SIS connectors. But very high quality. Each cable will be custom length, so we're not running through any unnecessary cable. These are solderless cables, so they're easy to put together with no soldering required. There's it's the internet, right? So you can spend hours reading debates between soldered versus solderless cables. I've been using SIS cables for a couple of years now and have no issues with them whatsoever.
I became convinced, even though, as you said, it's a pretty decent debate on the internet, but I became convinced that if you put together a quality solderless cable and you do it the right way, it should be as good as a soldered cable. I mean, a poorly soldered cable can fail all day long.
Oh, absolutely.
Also,
and I've had soldered cables fail.
Yes. So at any rate, there's that. And then,
of course, Velcro.
You'll know what that is.
You got the new board.
And then we got the new board.
And Kevin did an unboxing video on this board.
Yes.
Already, but this is the board in more detail. So this is from Hands.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is 32 inches by 16 inches.
A lot bigger than your old one.
Yeah. And let's see.
Get the power supplies out of the way.
This deck will come up. And so there's a couple of struts to hold the deck up. So you have easy access to under the board for your wiring and routing all of your wiring. And then you do have, I have some jacks on each side. And you also have a lot of space between the bottom of the board and the board deck to where your power supply will fit no problem. And if you had a few pedals, I don't think I'm going to have any extra pedals to go under the deck. But if you did, you could put some pedals under there, things that you may not either use often or pedals that are always on.
Right. So if you're somebody who has your compressor's always on, or you have a pedal that, I've had a couple pedals over the years that just being on, everything seemed to sound better. If you have stuff like that, they can go under the board, or with the switcher, you could actually, if you needed to, you could actually stash some pedals underneath, run them up to the switcher.
Especially if they're the type of pedal where you have your setting and that's where you leave it. So you could definitely do that and save space.
And all these inputs and outputs mean that all the pedals wire to these inputs and outputs, and then you just plug into the board itself.
You keep everything as clean as possible.
Absolutely.
So there was that.
It's a gorgeous board.
And then one of the reasons it is as big as it is because the QuarterMaster is pretty large.
Yeah.
And I wanted to fit the QuarterMaster and the looper pedal at the front of the board, because those are ones that are Well, I mean, the looper you have to be pretty accurate with, so you don't want to be stepping in the back with it. But the QuarterMaster I'm going to use more than anything.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's get to work, I guess.
We've got a lot of cables to make.